Good morning. We're going to let everybody get in, and then I think we started recording. So we are good to go. Megan, who is our lovely MC for most of our business moving forward, as you can see, she's coughing. She has a voice who's crackling. She is definitely not feeling so great today. So I appreciate her being on board and still getting us through these next 90 minutes. So we will bear with her, and I will help her along as we move forward.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. Pardon my voice. We were just talking about how it feels like everybody is somebody in their house is sick right now. So I don't think this is a new story, but hopefully we can get through it. So welcome everybody on a Thursday, which is not our normal day, but to Melissa's point earlier, it means that we're just closer to the weekend, which is great. So we have a quick few things that we're going to talk about together as a group, and then most of our time is going to be in the work groups, which we'll do an overview of. So we're excited to get those started, and then we'll come back together before we wrap up and just hear a little bit about what those work groups talked about. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Melissa, for a few updates from childcare licensing.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Megan. Just wanted to share and thank everybody who has participated and provided public comment on the proposed regulation to KAR 28-114. I think I have dreams of that regulation and have that embedded. I see Emily today, and it was so great to see her in person and actually providing testimony. So it's always this was a great process and able to intimately get to meet and see providers in a different venue. And she looked great that day. So it's so great to see providers who, you always look great, Emily, but it's just a moment when you don't have a child on your hip or anything as you've been joining us. So it's just a really good opportunity. Next steps for 114, our hearing officer will gather all that information, share it with our secretary at KDHE, who will make final decisions. Jarvis, our section director at childcare licensing, we really sat down and looked at this as an opportunity to also educate the regulated community on just the whole promulgation process, periods, otherwise known as just, normal reg review. So hopefully we will be able to, through our no reply email this week, be able to send out an update to partners and to the licensed providers, just where we are and what our next steps look like. So that is getting approved, and then we will get that out. So again, please be aware that the regulation has not passed because there's a very formal process where, again, we're still in just the sort of synthesizing following the hearing. I also wanted to announce for any of you who have worked with Roxanne Zillinger, she was our enforcement supervisor at KDHE and had been a longstanding regional administrator for some of our bigger counties. And she is now at the Department of Education. So she has joined Amanda Peterson's group. So you guys are very lucky, Amanda, to have Roxanne. Does not mean our work is stopping. We have 3 excellent regional administrators who are getting well trained, and the work is just going. But I do like to share staffing updates because we have it's definitely a supervisor position empty. It's usually like, what do we do next? How does the work keep processing? So just be rest assured, Jarvis is stepping into the role to provide guidance to that team, and the work is still moving forward. Also wanted to share in the chat, Clayton was very kind enough to add an article in the chat. I don't know if anybody has seen it. It came out this week or last week in the Washington Post that really illustrated just everybody, all the illness that is impacting childcare facilities and schools. I think the Washington Post is reporting that last month, more parents were out of the workforce due to children being ill, and they were either missing school or daycare. It's very unprecedented. It was even at the height of the pandemic. Did we have this many parents out of the workforce? So this is definitely impacting facilities, because we have facilities who may not have qualified staff to the units, or we have low census on in the units with kids. So KDHE really took a good hard look before this article. This just reinforces what we were doing within 429. And we just shared this with our licensed surveyors this morning, and we will be sharing it with facilities today. But really looking at what the workforce and facilities were doing to meet the needs of KDHE in regards to their staff qualifications. So we saw a lot of facilities lowering their unit size to make sure they aligned with their staff qualifications. And really, when we looked at 429H and the true intent of the regulation, we don't want to be processing multiple amendments. We want facilities to make good decisions because we trust facilities. When you look at how many facilities across the state are actually in compliance, it's a high level. So we have to have that partnership and trust facilities to make good decisions. So if they have a unit of 24, and they are self-regulating to 12, we are going to accept that the staff qualifications now align with the kids at any given time within that unit, and it makes sense. This is a very positive for facilities, for surveyors, and for KDHE in general. Like I said, we were processing a lot of amendments and felt very punitive with the staff qualification sites. So we really wanted to tackle a barrier, and we are doing it. So this is something that we discussed in CCSIT last year, and so definitely move forward with it. And I am really excited to see this change. That KDHE can pivot and look at the regulations and provide a better interpretation that fits the needs of our state. So very excited about this process. So if you hear anything, hopefully it will all be good. And the feedback I received already from surveyors was like, this is great. So glad we have this autonomy to make some good decisions. Because again, what I really want to stress is most facilities are doing everything correctly. They are doing the best that they can, and we need to really help support that. All right, that's all I have for KDHE updates. Really looking forward to the work groups and how you can continue to challenge us to be the best program we can. Megan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. So we're going to start something new each month, just kind of quickly before we break into our groups. We know that there are a lot of things happening at the local level and across the system and the state related to childcare, both exciting and challenging. And we want to just kind of take time to talk about that and celebrate a little bit and hear what are the bright spots that you're seeing in your work or in your community related to childcare. What are those things that you're like, oh, that was a really good idea. I think we just heard about Melissa talking about how can we provide some flexibility to providers as they're navigating, real-time challenges. What have you heard that's like, wow, that was a really great pivot for somebody to be able to, do what they needed to do related to childcare. So we're going to just take a few minutes here. And if anybody wants to either put something in the chat or come off mute and share, I don't think there's a bright spot too small. So we just want to hear, we know there's so many good things, and I think sometimes we forget to actually take the time to talk about them and acknowledge them because we're all doing the hard work every day. And I think it's worth taking a few minutes to celebrate that a little bit. So I'm going to stop screen sharing and anybody who wants to share, go ahead.
There has to be something to share. So okay, Emily, you came off mute, so I'm gonna quit talking.
So I'm not at liberty to tell details, but I will say, because we've at least put something on Facebook that for our conference, we're in the process of planning our conference, and we're still going to be utilizing the virtual element that has gone so successfully for the last couple of years. But we're also working, CCPC is working really hard to make sure that providers have a way to connect with each other, and will in the process get all 16 hours, including the health and safety, done by participating in our conference stuff. So just wanted to let you know there's a lot of really cool work on our end, and we're working really hard for you. We'll get those details out once we have them.
Thanks, Emily. Kim?
Yeah, one of the things that we have going on in our community, and a bright spot for us, is a collaboration with United Way to provide funds for a DCF childcare subsidy bridging fund. So we were able to use that for the first time within the last month or two, where a family had, we knew they would be eligible for a childcare subsidy. They had their provider chosen and on board with the process, but we knew we had a processing time of probably 4 to 6 weeks. So with this fund, we were able to provide, cover the childcare expenses for the first 2 months for that family, so, and pay it directly to the provider. So they were able to start childcare and start the job when they needed to, and the provider also received full tuition for those 2 months.
Thanks for sharing that, Kim. That's really exciting. And is that Douglas County or Lawrence specifically?
Douglas County, our United Way of Douglas County, which is now joined forces with Topeka to become United Way of Kaw Valley.
Fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, we will do this monthly. So if something happens between now and our mid-December meeting, know that there's a place for you to share. And with that, we will get ready for our groups here. So before we do that, obviously, we're going to start our new work groups today. We're going to put the group member list, which was emailed out today, in the chat as well. You'll be sent to your group, but just so you know where you're going, if you haven't had a chance to look at that. We did our best to put people in their top choice. We had to make a couple adjustments just to make sure there was group balance. But if you have any questions about where you're going and why, feel free to come back to the main room where Julia from our team will be, or message Julia directly, and we can take care of whatever's going on. But hopefully we get everybody where they're supposed to go. So we mentioned this in the email, but the planning team had used the responses from the survey that you all filled out a couple months ago, and then our discussion last month to determine kind of a few focus areas for the coming months. So we're going to start with the groups today and kind of talk through what those are, and the groups can decide which of those do you feel like is the priority, and kind of brainstorm what we'll really work on over November and December. And really the goal is for the groups to develop recommendations for childcare licensing. For those who were here the last year, you've been through that process. That being said, if something feels like it needs further conversation, or like a recommendation isn't the right fit, but you feel like there's something to it, feel free to elevate it to your facilitator, and we can kind of take that wherever it needs to go. We want to make sure that we're coordinating and complementing with other initiatives across the system, but also a lot of the things we talk about are really big topics. And so we want to make sure that there's plenty of room to dig in and talk about anything that's of interest to the group, specifically related to childcare licensing. So the recommendations are the likely output of the group, but there could be others. So the goal for today is to determine which topic or topics the groups are going to focus on this month and next month. We'll kind of see how things go, and if we need to adjust that timeline in terms of how long we need to talk about certain topics, we will. we'll go through this in the templates that the facilitators use today, but as you're thinking about how can we take these potential focus areas, think about how does that topic relate to childcare licensing, as a reminder that that's really the anchor that we need to hold on to. What related initiatives are happening within the early childhood system and or locally that might be helpful for the conversation. And what do you not know, or whose voices need to be represented to help inform a recommendation? So again, today it was really just kind of talking about what are we going to focus on. I think we'll kind of see how today goes and then continue the conversation in December and kind of decide when we're ready to flush out recommendations. But we just want to get the conversation going today. So we'll meet in our groups for about 50 minutes and then we'll return to the main room. Please identify somebody in each group to provide a quick, like 5-minute or so report out to the full group. We want to make sure people know what the groups are talking about. And obviously, since we can all only be in one group at a time, if you're interested in hearing what the other groups are talking about, those notes will be included with the meeting notes, so you can kind of follow along as well. So we'll come back then and discuss, but just wanted to share before we do that, the last slide as a reminder. Our next meeting in December is in the evening, and then we'll go back to 2 mornings in January and February and an evening in March. We sent this out via email and can include it with the notes, but we've put together a Google Drive. Everything will continue to be sent out via email, but if you ever want to go back and look at older meeting minutes or any older materials, that drive is just kind of like the archive of all things for the set. So just a reminder that's available. If you need that link, let us know. And with that, are there any questions before we head to our breakouts?
I think that sounds great. Thank you, Megan.
Of course. Okay. Well, have a great discussion, and we will see everybody back here at 11:10. Julia is going to send us all on our way.
What, buddy? Hello? Hi, I was in. Oh, I can't hear you.
That would help. I'll send you
Yeah.
back to the room.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hit something and went out.
That's okay. Give me 1 second.
Thank you. Go play with your friends.
Sorry, I always forget that I put my mic up. You
That's
need to-
okay. I have to leave early today and I meant to hit leave meeting, but somehow
Oh.
it sent me back here. So
Okay,
I'll
good.
see you next month.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye. We'll be closing the groups in 1 minute.
Here they all come. Welcome back. I think we're still missing a group, right, Julia?
Yes, yep, provider supports. I think it's going to close automatically in like 3 seconds.
Okay. We were rebels and we just hit the blue button to
Love
see what
it.
would happen and going back.
It worked.
You did.
Welcome back. I think we have everyone.
I think we're all good. We're all back now.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, we will do kind of a quick report out from each group about what you talked about. And then again, these notes will be available. I'm excited to hear what the other groups talked about. Melissa, are you sharing from the regulatory group, or do you have somebody else?
No, I'm actually going to share. Can I just pull up my form so I don't forget it?
Of course.
Okay. Let me just go back to the document we were working within. So we spent a lot of time just coming up with ideas, and then we're going to vote on our top ones to move forward with. So I will go through these quickly. So what we really want to focus in on was when we talked about complaints, the complaint process, and really educating parents, staff, and just the lay, the lay community of what that entails and what that looks like from a regulatory standpoint and also an enforcement standpoint, because Angela had shared some really good points in the field that we really need to address. Goes back to education and communication of the parent, provider, and surveyor, really looking at understanding the CCL process anyway, because the bread and butter of CCL is regulation, and just having that really good communication so everybody's well-versed in the process. And we talked about just throw every idea out there. So we talked about a CCL hotline, FAQs on our website, regular updates of interpretation of regulations. So everybody, in looking at common issues, especially with the FAQs. So it could be, in my mind, it looked like the FAQs is a revolving door of what is the hot topic today and how do we access and get everybody on the same page. Then really led us to having a discussion with center application of regulations within the unit. of these are the regulations and these are how they apply at really not a program director piece, but really a staffing component. And what can we do to support that program director? And that could be some training videos of how we apply, what the survey process looks like, so that everybody's appropriately interpreting regulation correctly and applying it. And then really also looking at ensuring KDHE regulations align with the Office of Child Care final rules, because it's really important to make sure that we're within federal compliance. And then talked about, again, ideas, the center training for facilities, and using CACFP as an example, because they have some quick training examples, like 5-minute training videos that facilities can utilize. And then I skipped one, is looking at an interpretive guide that can live on the KDHE website. And we're going to look at other states and examples of interpretive guides. Here's the regulation, but really what does it mean to apply that regulation in your facility? And looking at interpretive guides for all of the programs that KDHE regulates. So we will be doing some homework, looking at some of those different pieces, looking at the trainings that CACFP offers, and if we can translate to us, and then how do we, narrow it down to our top 3 to really start fleshing out.
Wow, sounds like you had a great discussion.
Yes, very good. Love the team.
Anything else from anybody in the regulatory and best practices group? Or any questions? Okay, well, I can share from the provider supports group. So we also had a great discussion. So we really focused, I think we actually have selected our kind of priority area over the next couple of months, which is this toolkit for community partners. And so we talked a lot about, how can we leverage existing materials that exist? We know a lot has been developed through like the Communities in Action work, through Child Care Aware of Kansas, through some of the other R&Rs, that there's just a lot of like local materials. And so how can we evaluate what currently exists and kind of pull it together into a toolkit that could help community partners that are interested in either supporting or starting childcare? We talked quite a bit about, there's a lot in place to help people have the initial conversations about childcare, but it's not an easy task, just particularly for people that maybe aren't in childcare all the time. It might be kind of a new world for them, and so how can we create something that's really digestible to help kind of take it beyond the conversation level and help communities actually move forward and get started with childcare. So the audience that we are thinking is economic development, chambers of commerce, extension offices, business owners like large employers, community development foundations. And I know this has come up a lot with the other toolkits we've talked about, but the need for it to be really digestible and kind of demystify the process so that people feel supported, but it's not like kind of reduce that overwhelm of stepping into childcare and starting that. So we heard about some great ideas coming out of the Manhattan Child Care Task Force that we might look into. They've had an idea to partner with OBGYNs who are meeting with new parents, and particularly as parents are having to decide between being able to access childcare and potentially leaving the workforce. Like, is that an opportunity to kind of help people understand, like, oh, well, it could be that you could start your own childcare as well. There are alternatives, or just elevate the need for childcare in a community and maybe start the conversation there. Again, we talked about how can we look at existing materials and kind of personalize those and target those to communities and partners that are interested in childcare. Then we got more focused on the, kind of community and business side and started fleshing out a little bit like what could this toolkit include, and again noting like the need for it to be kind of potentially parsed out for different audiences and making it digestible, but specifically around businesses, like what are the benefits to them of starting childcare. We talked quite a bit about like actually understanding if you're starting facilities, like how could we make it a little bit simpler for people to understand, you know, what are the basics that everybody needs to know if they're saying, oh, my community is really interested in starting childcare. We have this building that may or may not be a good fit. What are their, you know, what are one pagers to kind of help people? Like, what are the initial things you need to look for? We talked about how the childcare licensing team already offers center consultations. And so making sure people know about those, when do you access those? So we talked quite a bit about the building itself and like, how can we just help break down that process? So I think we covered a lot, and we'll spend December kind of honing in on what do we feel like needs to be in the toolkit. And again, how do we make this have plenty of information, but in a format that's really digestible. So I don't know if anybody else from my group wants to share anything else, please go ahead.
Megan, I'm not in your group, but I just want to say on that, where you mentioned the getting providers on board and helping them figure out, you know, building plans and stuff with the fire marshal. I just was on a call this morning with fire marshal's office, and we discussed putting together a plan, something to post online, to kind of step by step, you know, to help providers help them with that step of knowing what they're looking for and exactly what they need. Not only what they need from the fire marshal's office, but what they need to submit to KDHE, you know, for licensure. So
that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think we talked about there's a lot of things that are either currently developed or in the works that could certainly be leveraged and pulled together in different formats for this toolkit. Okay, last but not least, Clayton, are you sharing, or is there somebody from your group?
I'm gonna share my screen.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jarvis.
Okay. Can everyone see that? I'm gonna probably make it a little larger. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we had system engagement and communication. A lot of what we ended up talking about was the communication, the first topic here between care providers and, you know, directors and surveyors, and not just, you know, expanded beyond surveyors, but, you know, I'll let them know that that's one of the things we're looking at, and Melissa can kind of allude to this too, but looking to get back to that customer service, not just within the field, but like I said, within our office. So just looking for more communication and more reaching out and, you know, being on the same page with things, working with licensing and survey on the front end for new facilities. And also, this was a pretty good topic here for opportunities of saying yes to, you know, different regulations, and also helping them, not only citing them, but also, you know, letting them know what we can do to help. And that goes back to that customer service piece that we're really looking forward to doing. I know Melissa's got a training she's working on getting the surveys into next month. So I know a lot of what she has is provided around customer service too. So we did talk about also, you know, online. This is a very good point that Emily made, that when potential people go out to look for daycares and they go onto the site to look at violations, and that's all they see is violations. Even if the facility does not, you know, they had a really good survey, they're still seeing, you know, what small violations were there, and they're not seeing the good things that, you know, that the surveyor may have seen while they were on the visit there. So we talked about ways to possibly be able to highlight those positive areas so the public can see, because from what I understand, the staff and those behind the scenes can see, but those looking outside, the public can't see those positive things. So we talked about some different ways we could go by doing that. I mentioned the Kayla survey, you know, talked about having those, getting those surveys to those facilities and having some kind of certification forms showing that, the quality of their facility, and I don't know, creating some kind of, I won't say reward system, but just to show the public, rankings and where these facilities rank at, because it is true. You go look and you only see just see the survey. Melissa, I don't know if you want to expand on this as far as the survey piece, and I didn't know what else was there for that was being looked into as far as certificates and things of that nature, but.
I'm sorry, Jarvis. Not really prepared to.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Well, I've been trying to read it. I'm just
Oh,
gonna
can you
be
see
honest,
it?
my bifocals are not. Yours is small, and so did not want to squish my face all the way up against my Zoom camera this morning.
That's
That
okay.
is so.
No, I was just mentioning that I didn't know how that CALIS survey was going to work, and as far as if there was going to be some kind of certificate generated from that, or
No, our CALIS surveys are very different. A CALIS survey is an opportunity for a provider, in case anybody, just to take a step back, pre-COVID, CALIS surveys are licensing indicator surveys that, if based on a provider's history and level of compliance found on site, they would have an abbreviated survey. And it's not that it's a shortened survey. It's just that the science behind this shows us if they are in compliance with this X amount of subsection of regulations, then they are in compliance with the rest. And a facility can be eligible for that for 2 years in a row. There's no real reward with that, because we just don't know if they're going to open up or not. It's just, hey, great job. Now the surveyor's moving on to the next survey. And it really speaks to the provider's ability, which they should be doing every day, is they're just ownership. They're doing their job. They're just following regulation, doing what, and then that gives an opportunity, really theoretically, for the surveyor then to spend more time on the facilities who might need more support. So we can talk more about those later, but since we did bring up CALIS, just to let the group know that for those who have either benefited it or had them, or are well aware of our licensing indicator surveys, KDHE is knee deep in re-looking at the data, and hopefully we'll be relaunching CALIS surveys in the future. Within the next year, we will have a new set of data. So I probably confused everybody, but I just wanted to make sure that we were really staying the path.
Thanks for that, Melissa. So yeah, I'll just move on. And the last thing we kind of talked about was the webpage, which we are in talks of, trying to figure out different ways to make that more user friendly for everyone, not just providers, but ourselves as well, because we get lost, in the webpage as well. So I think that's mostly what we finished up with there. So.
Angela, I saw your hand go up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little to that, like our KDHE website, when the parents go to that, if they know about it, a lot of families still do not know that that exists, that you can see the compliance history on our KDHE website. But we do portray just, maybe the negative side of it, like those are the violations. But maybe I do like where you guys were going with this, because we want to reward our providers for being excellent and being in good compliance. So previously I've created certificates to reward them. So they are in full compliance. I went back to the office and created a certificate and sent it to them and made it kind of a big deal. And some of them posted it in their facilities, let their families know. I mean, they were proud of that. And so maybe at a local level, we can really figure out, how do we show that appreciation or show that they are doing a great job in following these regulations? And maybe that's social media. Like maybe we can go back to these certificates. It's not something that costs that much to make, and then also just putting it on social media, like this happened this month or whatever.
Thanks for sharing that. Emily, go ahead.
I think the biggest thing, yes, thank you. A certificate is good and it's helpful, but it's also private. part of what we're dealing with that we shoulder the brunt of the fact that there is a very negative view of the childcare workforce in our society in general. And so what is done, a certificate is helpful, but please help us improve the outward perception of the work that we are doing. The work we are doing is meaningful. And I'm preaching to the choir here. Everybody's here because you all already agree. But that doesn't mean that business person, you know, Joe down the street agrees and even cares or wants to. And so part of what I think is being asked for is making sure that the perception from our regulatory body is helping push this narrative of capable professionals who are working hard and diligently. And we all work for the elusive no violation survey, but that's really hard. It's really, really hard. And one little violation, it still gets out there, and a certificate on my wall doesn't change the public perception of the hard work that I'm doing in my home. So keep that in mind.
So to piggyback on that, Emily, I would agree. It's unrealistic. You guys work in a very human service field where things just happen because we're there at that exact moment. So one of the charges that our myself and DCF, our agency, KDHE and DCF, have looked at and being charged by the Office of Child Care is to look at our consumer education and looking at our website to be more transparent and to explain those gaps for parents and just anybody within the regulated community or anybody off the streets. What does this mean? And so we are doing a deep dive into our website. I actually participated in a training, a technical assistance with the Office of Child Care, myself and DCF, to look at that and challenging how do we do that? Because I will be the first, I think Jarvis echoed it. Our website is poor at translating that information. It's good about putting forms up, and even those are really poorly drafted and put in a way that is not user friendly. So KDHE hears you, and this is a challenge again from the Office of Child Care specifically. And so regardless of what the CCSIT team does, we are going to keep moving forward on that project. So really want to be a more user-friendly and conduit of information that helps everybody make good decisions. And it's positive. Like, well, again, you see the violations, but what does that mean? If you see 3 violations, well, knowing your facility was in compliance with over 200 violations. And what do those violations actually look like? Natalie, I see your hand went up.
Yeah, I have a question about, so when you talk about in-home providers, especially, so as a parent, when we're looking for childcare, I know that you have basic training requirements, and I know the links to quality is looking at different pathways and rankings of qualifications. And I'm in an industry that once you're licensed, you have certain credentials that follow your name, your email signature, that kind of thing. And so just the overall discussion of professionalism around the industry, you know, is it something that as an agency, whether it's KDHE or maybe it's in collaboration with Casito, looking at how we can get people certified, so in that way there's more of a professional viewpoint of this person is a mastery at their expert level because they have X amount of training hours and they also are a trainer and all those things. So looking at how we can increase that professionalism discussion, I wholeheartedly agree with the person that just mentioned that, the in-home provider. I apologize, I didn't catch your name. And I think that'd be helpful just as parents that are in the workforce. I'm used to seeing credentialing for people who are HR, human resources individuals, for recruiters, for architects, for attorneys. Like they all have that special certification. Why is childcare any different? You have to have a ton of training. We should be able to award these people that recognition of that professional service.
So let's go back to, I think was it last month's presentation was the career pathway. It's not aligning with licensing, and that's the exact reason, is because you can be a home provider and you can follow that career pathway. So I'm really looking forward, and I'm sure your group, this group, will be one that we will share with the final product. But I would go back and encourage anybody who has questions exactly in Natalie's nature to look at the career pathway, because I think Kansas's meeting is going to be there one day with some of these really cool components all coming together at the same time. And Megan, it is 11:34, so I want to honor our time, so I'm going to just pass it to you. Really good discussion though this morning, everybody. Really excited about our work groups.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you to everybody who was able to stick around for a few more minutes. Yes, thank you for the fantastic discussion today. We will see you again in mid-December and pick up there, and wish everybody a